How are you, folks? Punching on with the videos. This spring 2025 is just too good to let things get ignored. I'm just trying to cover as much as I can for you, and it just seems I'm broadening out and making videos on anything and everything, so I'll just try and keep them coming. Again, this is a beautiful Castlereagh Nature Reserve in Western Sydney. Just really lucky I'm working with my son out here today, just doing a bit more threatened flora monitoring. And it's just a bit hard to go past this one. And if you've seen my content lately, you'll go, oh, we've got another acacia, but actually we don't. And I hope I'm not, discouraging you too much to learn your flora. And as I zoom in on this, it looks very, very wattle-like, but it's not. This is a Melaleuca. This is Melaleuca nodosa. And it gets called the honey myrtle. It can be a bit of I think some people would say possibly a bit of an ugly shrub when it's not in flower, but when it's flowering, it's absolutely beautiful. And you can see there's a whole heap of it through the reserve here. There's a lot of it in flower all the way through, and it's part of this endangered ecological community we got here called Cooks River Castlereagh Ironbark Forest, although where I am right here, it's a bit of a merging of Castlereagh Scribbly Gum woodland and Cooks River Castlereagh Ironbark. They're two endangered communities that get out here. Melaleuca nodosa, I didn't know, I'm right on, it's pretty much close to its southern range here. Its southern range extent is Campbelltown. I just had no idea of that. It's a bit hard to put all these geographical ranges in your head. It goes from Campbelltown, south of Sydney, and we're sort of in the Penrith area, so I'm not too far from there. And it punches north up the coast and sort of tablelands areas of New South Wales and goes there into Queensland, sort of through that Warwick area again. When it gets into Queensland, it's very coastal, but it also goes out west a fair bit. It goes through areas like Chinchilla and Miles, and it ends up there sort of west of Rockhampton there somewhere, a fair bit inland. And then there's some scattered records between Townsville and Cairns. It looks like they're on the Atherton Tableland somewhere, but there's some scattered records there. Not too many, but it sort of looks like that's a very disjunct patch there between Cairns and Townsville somewhere. So it's getting up there as well. But that's the natural range. It's a Queensland, New South Wales species. On New South Wales flora, it says they get to 4 metres high, but that's a bit of a furphy. They get a lot taller than that. They can turn into a tree sometimes about, I don't know, maybe 8 metres or 9 metres. A lot of the time you do see them, they're growing as a shrub, especially in this habitat, but they also grow as a genuine sort of small tree as well. I've seen them up to about 7 or 8 metres. There's another one here called Melaleuca decora that grows with it. This one's a bit pricklier than Melaleuca decora. Decora has broader leaves that aren't sort of as prickly. It'll grow in habitat like this, dry sclerophyll woodland. But what you may have also noticed about Melaleuca nodosa, if you know it, it'll grow on sort of ocean cliffs in the Royal National Park and forms part of the coastal heathland there. So in the coastal heath, you'll see it growing like this. And it can be a bit impenetrable along parts of the coast track in the Royal National Park around Bundeena there. And the deer apparently don't eat it. It's one of these plants that the rooster deer just won't eat. Isn't palatable for them apparently, something like that. So just some of you might be asking, and I'm happy to tell you, Dan, why isn't this a wattle? Well, it doesn't produce pods for a start. These are the fruits of Melaleuca nodosa, which you can quite commonly find. Melaleuca's in the Myrtaceae. They've got capsules, and they cluster them in these little knobs here, and this is where the botanical name comes from, nodosa. It's sort of meaning these little knobbly fruits. That's what it's referring to. Nodules is sort of the root it's the root of that word as well. These little nodules each little capsule is clustered into a nobular growth like that. So if you just got to use all your evidence and look for what you can find, this plant holds onto these capsules very readily, and they're sort of clustered in on each other. You know, if we're making broad links, a bit like the fruit of a stringy bark eucalypt, which it's related to broadly. It's in the same family. It's just clustering its woody capsules together like that. They're only a couple of mil wide, as you can see on the tip of my finger there, clustered in together. So it's a Melaleuca. They have simple leaves, Melaleucas, and these ones, they can be to sort of 4 centimetres long and a couple of mil wide. They've got a bit of a prickle to them, and they won't have a gland on them like a lot of acacia leaves do. And the other thing about Melaleuca being in the Myrtaceae, I crush it, and this is really hurting my hands to do this. They've got an aroma there, an odour, like a tea tree-like odour coming off the leaves. So that's another thing that differentiates them from acacias as well. But it's very prickly, this thing. I can understand people thinking it looks a bit like Acacia ilicifolia, prickly Moses, but it's a bigger plant. Yeah, a little bit of an odour there, though. It's very hard to smell because you just get prickles up your nose. There's a little bit there. So just look at the bark as well. It's starting to get this papery bark, which Melaleucas are known to get. Doesn't have a lot of it at the moment. It would have to be a bigger plant, but it gets this sort of papery, fibrous bark in this case that you can pull off. And that's what defines our paperbarks, just have these papery sort of fragments on them. Obvious in the bigger tea trees, or the bigger paperbarks, I should say. Melaleuca's been called paperbarks. So I said prickly tea tree before. It's probably called prickly paperbark, but I have also seen it called the honey myrtle, which is a nice name for it. Now, we've got the Melaleuca flowers, and they're very staminate, like eucalyptus flowers and like wattle flowers as well. They are very staminate, but they've just got a different flower set up to that of acacia. They do have petals down the bottom. They're very similar set up to acacias. They've got one female part, and they've got a whole heap of stamens coming out. And they do have petals at the bottom there. And I might just try and pull a flower out and see if we can have a close look at it. You can see they're a nice cream colour, very pale cream, put out in these nice heads. It's doing it in a real sort of Kunzia-like fashion. Just really beautiful. And we do have, many flowers per head, just like an acacia. We've got the buds here. They don't really talk about how many flowers per head because not every Melaleuca is putting their flowers in this sort of fashion. But you can see the buds there quite clearly that are going to emerge. Alternate leaves as well, like a wattle too. But do note some Melaleucas can throw opposite leaves and some throw alternate. You can see the pungent point on them there as well. I'll just try and see if I can get an individual flower out. One thing about these Melaleucas we've always liked in a bit of a botanical horticultural sense, and I'm not saying I'm going to be able to do this justice here with my phone, but if you're going to follow the stamens down through the flowers, the bottom of the stamens are fused. They're sort of fused into what we call these staminal claws. And this is about as close as I'm going to be able to get. But where the stamens come down from the tips there with the anthers, they're fused into these groups at the bottom. And that's something that acacia doesn't really do. But it's something that Melaleuca does, and it's something that differentiates it from callistemon, or it's meant to differentiate it. I'm trying to turn my hand around, and just down the bottom there, the stamens are all fusing into one sort of thickened, fattened base at the bottom. And each flower tends to have 5. It tends to have 5 staminal claws at the bottom. And it's so hard to demonstrate, but you really need to get it under a hand lens to have a look. But if you can sort of see that fattened white bit there going into the green part, that's where all the stamens are coming together in one staminal claw. And the Melaleucas are known for having staminal claws. And I'm just trying to show that there. But if you want to argue with me that they're similar to wattle inflorescences, they are. I can get that as well. It's sort of a different plant family doing business in a similar way. But they've got a different structured perianth a bit. They do have the staminal claws, which acacia doesn't have. And they're not producing a pod like we saw. They're producing a capsule. So it's all in the fruit. Just trying to have a look at this one. Yeah, you can sort of see the bases of those stamens going into those fat and white parts. They're the staminal claws. And normally there's 5 per flower. So quite interesting to see that down there. They talk about online the flowers being sort of clustered in their own little separate groups, and then they're clustered together in a sort of globular head or a ball. Just like acacia, I think, but probably defined differently. But just look out for those staminal claws in Melaleuca. They're quite nice. So I might have to move on, but that's hopefully enough for that one. It's an easy one to get familiar with. Just make sure you look for the fruit. It's the fruit that'll lead you right on Melaleuca nodosa. Like I said, it holds them for a long time. It tends to hold them for a long period. But this now, early October, it's in full flower, and it's a nice one to have a look at. I'll just take you through on the way out back to the car. There's just so many of them through here. And you can see on average, they're just, a fair bit bigger than your average Acacia licifolia, which maybe if you're just starting out in your botany, you might confuse it with. But it's a really beautiful plant. This would be a really good resource for bees. It's probably going to flower for about a month, and then it might be done. I don't think it'll flower much longer than that, but it'll take its time more than, an acacia will. It won't sort of flower over 5 minutes. It might just flower over a month or so, but it's in its full cry now. Here's just an example of a taller, more mature one. And here's the paperbark, bark on it. It's really nice. I always like the idea of First Nations traditional women wrapping babies in it to carry them around. It's a really nice thought when you think about paperbark. And this one here, it's getting up to, this one would be 2, 4, this would be 5 metres. So a nice 5 metre tree, but this is what they can do when they get to their sort of full prime. They won't do this in coastal heathland, obviously, but no problems doing this. Just when they get more mature, and they're just covered in fruit. You can see that they're just covered in fruit here. It's got a bit of dieback on it, but just covered in fruit, and there's the flowers there. But maybe the smaller shrubs will look a bit nicer because they're in their prime.